Swadika, good afternoon and welcome to the special edition of Thai PBS World as we are covering the ongoing protests at the SCB headquarters. I'm Nabunak and Kotep Chayong.
Yeah, and at this very moment, hundreds of protesters have returned up in front of the SCB headquarters on Ratchayotin Road in Jatujak area. And it was a sudden last-minute change of mind on the part of the protesters because initially they planned to hold the rally in front of the Crown Property Bureau. But last night they changed their mind, citing as a reason that they did not want to confront another group of protesters who are loyalists who are opposed to their today's protest. So they said that the decision was based on their desire to avoid that kind of confrontation.
And after the announcement, SCB announced this morning that their head office is closed today. And at the same time, police already erected barriers to prevent the protesters from getting near the bank on Ratchayotin Road, as well as additional CCTV cameras were also installed around the bank as well. And as you can see, that there's police patrolling the area very closely. And the reason why that Siam Commercial Bank or SCB was established the reason why they chose SCB as the bank, as the place for the rally sites day is because SCB was established by Royal Charter back in 1907 as the first Thai bank during the reign of King Rama V. And what might be the reason why SCB head office is chosen as the rally site for today is because His Majesty the King is the biggest single shareholder of SCB with up to 23.38% of the shares. And this information is according to the Stock Exchange of Thailand. Other top shareholders include asset management companies as well as the Social Security Office. And as claimed by the Free Youth Group, they believe that the money here is actually a taxpayer's money.
Okay, so the choice of holding their rally in front of the bank is certainly very symbolic.
Yes.
And the protest leaders who have taken to the stage in the past 1 hour have been very direct in their attack on the Crown Property Bureau for what they see as the abuse of the assets of the Bureau. And as Kun Nat said, that they claim that the assets belonging to the monarchy and to the Crown Property Bureaus, in fact, are assets that are the property of the people. They were paid for by people's taxes. So they want a more transparent monitoring supervision of how the assets of the Bureau are handled. And the protests come just only a week after Prime Minister Prayut Chan-o-cha threatened to deploy all laws against protesters who breach all the laws. And of course, I mean, he singled out, he did not mention specifically. And of course, it's understood that when he says all laws, it also includes Article 112 of the Penal Code, which is, criminalizes any insults of the monarchy. It's an offense that carries jail terms, heavy jail terms, and the not so very good news is that at least 12 of the protest leaders over the past 1 day have been charged with violating this particular article of the criminal code.
And the protest leaders include one of many of the leaders that we've been hearing in the news, whether it's Penguin Parichiwarak, Rung Panasaya, Mai Panupong Jatnok, Anon Nampa, Mai Pasarawali, Chanin Wongsi, Juthatip Sirikan, Fort Tattep, Atapon Buapat, Chu Kiet Sang Wong, Sompat Thong Yoi, and Piyarat Jongtep. All of these protest leaders are facing lese majesty charges, and Penguin has up to 8 cases pending. Rung Panasaya has up to 6, and Mike Jat Nok has up to 4. Other than that, has only a 1 or 2 cases.
Okay. And what you're seeing now is one of the protest leaders, probably among the most prominent protest leaders, Parit Chiwarak, or Penguin. And today he dressed up in the duck mascot costume. And the duck mascot has become a symbol of the protesters over the past few weeks. It
Yes.
came to prominence 2 weeks ago, remember that?
Yes.
When protesters held inflatable ducks as cover against
As a shield.
as a shield,
Yep.
as a cover against high pressure water jets used by police against them.
Yep.
In fact, the rubber ducks have been used by protesters in several other countries in their fight against dictatorships, against capitalist exploitations, and in Thailand it has been used as a symbol more often now against the current government. And today, Parit deliberately dressed up in the duck mascot costume.
So it's quite an eye candy here to see Penguin dressed up as a duck.
Yes.
And if we all remember a couple weeks with the protests where people used inflatable ducks as shields to protect themselves from any of the water cannons and the chemicals that were sprayed or injected at the protesters to disperse.
Yeah. And the use of the rubber ducks by the protester has managed to make headlines all over the world now. And if you take a look at major newspapers around the world, the presence of the rubber ducks certainly has made quite a wave.
Right.
And this is not gimmicks being used by the protester as a fake, sort of an imitated banknotes, again with
the
duck
image
mascot.
of a duck.
And of course, the protesters have been quite innovative in employing new gimmicks to draw media attention. And today, during the rally, which began about an hour ago, the protesters have been giving out what you're seeing now, the fake banknotes in the form of that bearing the image of a rubber duck, right?
Yes. Rubber duck, but dressed up as a royal.
That's right, with a crown, royal crown on his head.
Royal crowns and other things around on the body. Yep.
And some of the protest leaders have threatened to carry on the protest at the SCB headquarters for the next few days. We don't know yet how many days they would go on, but the latest we have heard is that it will be at least 5 days. So that cannot yet be officially confirmed whether that is the intention of the protester or an aim of certain individuals of the protest leadership.
And like we said earlier, that the anti-government protesters moved from the Crown Property Bureau to the SCB head office around Ratchada Pisek area. And if we can show you a map of where the protest site is actually located. Not sure, do we have one? Oh, not yet. Okay, so the SCB head office is located around Ratchada Pisek area, which has already been blocked off with the police and other barbed wires, I believe, with CCTV cameras as well. And you can see right now that many of the anti-establishment protesters have already gathered since the afternoon today. And this is actually the SCB headquarters right now. And you can see that the police are actually protecting the area.
So our advice, of course, is that try to avoid this area at all costs, because the traffic around this place is certainly not very good for you to travel to.
And if we might notice this morning that it's sort of a heavy traffic this morning because of the effect that the SCB head office is actually the protest site for today.
Normally, the traffic around this area is already bad. I mean, even on normal days, or especially during rush hours. So you can imagine how worse it will get with this protest, which will certainly drag on until at least throughout until nightfall. Yeah. But as we said earlier, that some of the protest leaders have indicated that they may want to carry on the protest for a few days.
And so far on the social media platforms, for example, Twitter, the hashtag 25 พฤศจิกา by SCB has over 1.6 million tweets already. But at the same time, another hashtag that has been trending as well is on the royalist side. It's called ภูมิใจที่ได้รับเสด็จ has up to 119,000 tweets as of now. This is the Twitter scene, and as you can see that many people online are pretty interested in what is going on with the anti-establishment protest at SCB. And on the other side, it has been reported that the royalists gathered around the Lumpini Park, awaiting to grant audience by their majesties.
And as far as the Prime Minister Kun Prayut Chan-o-cha is concerned, he is still being able to put up a very calm face today in the face of the rally. When he was asked to comment on the rally this morning, and was asked specifically to comment on speculation that the government or he may consider impose martial law to deal with the potential unrest resulting from the rally, he flatly denied any possibility of introducing martial law. He said the existing laws are sufficient to deal with the situation. He was speaking to reporters after presiding over a meeting. It's a virtual meeting with representatives of the ASEAN-US Business Council to discuss business cooperation in the ASEAN region. And earlier, he had maintained that the government will not use any violent means to deal with the rally today. But of course, he threatened to use all laws to deal with any violators of the laws. Yeah.
And at the same time, yesterday, Deputy Prime Minister Prawit Wongsuwan also said that there won't be any violence used by the police against the protesters, and he also believes that there won't be any confrontation between the anti-establishment protesters and the royalists. That's what he said yesterday, and it's more in line to what the Prime Minister said today, that hopefully there's no confrontation, and he also said that there won't be a martial law as well.
All right, we have our reporter over there. I mean, with the latest on and what you're seeing now is the live footage from the scene of the rally in front of the SCB headquarters on Ratchayotin Road.
And I believe, and Kun Kitipat Chisukjit is at the rally site right now, and I guess he's ready to tell us what the atmosphere is going on. So, Kun Kitipat, what is the atmosphere over there?
Good afternoon, Kun Thepachai and Kun Nat. So as the plans of the gathering of the pro-democracy protest has been changed from the Crown Property Bureau to the SCB Bank or the Siam Commercial Bank headquarters, right now a lot of people flocked into the area in front of the SCB headquarters. And as the protest is organized under the campaign of everyone can be the leader, right now we can see the 3 points of the main stage. First one is the main stage from the young generation of Nonthaburi province. And the second one is the Nopashaw main stage or red shirt main stage. And the third one is the big main stage. So every stage is the main stage, but the big main stage is over there in front of the main entrance of the SCB Bank entrance. And over there, I have seen the leader like Kun Penguin Parit or Kun Rung Panasaya. Kun Penguin wearing a dark costumes with his design, with the symbol of the protest today. And you can see the people, the protest who is standing lined up behind me. They are lining up to donate their money to the protest. And after that, they will get the duck money here.
So
The yellow duck money.
Yep. So tell us a bit more
The
about
protester
the
can
duck
donate
money.
in any amount of money, and then they will get. Yep. Oh, it's just a symbol of the today protest.
So what is the...
So over there,
All right.
if there are,
So what about the protest leaders? Apart from Rung Panasaya and Penguin, do you see anyone else?
or I haven't seen any other leader of the protest except Kun Rung and Kun Penguin.
All right. Okay.
And they both talking about the, Kun Penguin is talking about the monarchy on the stage.
Okay. Thank you, Kun Kitipat.
And right now I haven't seen any sign of the stressful situation at this place.
Okay.
All right, thank
Okay.
you, Kun Kitipat. And that is the latest
Okay.
from the rally site in front of SCB head office at Ratchadapse.
And hope that things will go smoothly without any violent incidents. And as Kun Kitipat just mentioned that the protest leaders who have taken to the stage have been talking about what they see as a lack of transparency and the lack of monitoring mechanism for the use of the funds or assets of the crowd property bureaus. And so the protest today comes just only a few days after the government issued a threat of using Article 112, which deals with lèse majesty, and to deal with protesters who resort to insulting the monarchy. And as we have noticed that many of the protest leaders have become bolder and bolder each day in criticizing the monarchy. And that's the reason the authorities have been prompted to come up with a threat to use this, what is seen as the draconian law in dealing with the protester.
And most of the protest leaders, whether it's Rung Panasaya, Penguin, Anon Nampa, they are not only charged with the lèse majesty laws, or widely known as Section 112. Some of them were also charged with Section 116, which involves the sedition as well. So but despite the charges that have been laid against the protesters, the protest leaders rather, but what we may have noticed is that the protests have been escalating to a point where they start talking about the monarchy issues.
So as we have reported, at least 12 protest leaders have been summoned to acknowledge lèse majesty charges for the comments they made in a series of protests that they attended. Among these people, of course, the most outstanding ones include Parit Chiwarak or Penguin Panasaya, Anon Ampa. These people have been taking part in several rallies, both in Bangkok and some other major provinces. And they were accused of making remarks critical of the monarchy at many of these venues. So that's why they have been summoned by police at different locations to acknowledge the charges against them. And as we have expected, the threat to use this specific law against the protest leader has drawn some international responses. And one of the reactions came from Amal Clooney, who is a human rights lawyer and wife of movie star George Clooney. And she said in the statement that no one should be arrested or imprisoned merely for criticizing public officials or system of government. So that's the latest reaction from an international human rights lawyer over the threat to use Article 112 against people criticizing the monarchy.
And if you just joined right now, this is the live coverage of the ongoing anti-establishment protest in front of SCB head office at Ratchada Pisek Road. And the reason why Siam Commercial Bank is chosen as the rally site today is not only that it was the first Thai bank established during the reign of King Rama V, but the reason is that His Majesty the King is the biggest single shareholder of SCB with up to 23% of the shares, according to the information by Stock Exchange of Thailand. So the protesters are actually seeking clarification of what this thing means, because they believe that this money is actually taxpayers' money.
And we all remember, of course, the 10-point demand made by the protesters. One of the points deal with the royal assets under the Crown Property Bureau. The protesters want to see more transparency, more effective monitoring mechanisms over the use of the funds of the Bureau.
And although the protesters moved to the SCB head office, there has been a couple of pictures on social media that the police have closed off the area around the Crown Property Bureau already, and we might have seen containers and barbed wires been closing off the area to prevent the protesters from invading the area, which is regarded as the palace area. But all of a sudden, they decided last night around 10 p.m. that they will move to SCB.
What you're seeing now is the moving of containers to block roads around the spot where the Crown Property Bureau is located, because the protesters had earlier threatened to hold a rally at this very site. So the authorities, since yesterday, started blocking all roads leading to that particular spot.
And so far, apart from Penguin and Rung Panasaya, there has been reports that Mike Rayong is also there as well. This is the latest from Thai PBS.
Talking about the issue of the royal assets, one of the points raised by the protester is about the legislation back in 2018 that was introduced to combine the assets of the Crown Property Bureau with those of His Majesty the King, his personal assets. And the protester want these particular piece of legislation to be abrogated. And as we have been saying that the protesters have become bolder and bolder in their criticisms of the monarchy. And that's why there were reactions from the other side. And one of the reasons why the protesters decided to move their protest venue from the area in front of the Crown Property Bureau to the headquarters of the Siam Commercial Bank was because they said they would not want to confront the other group of protesters who describe themselves as loyalists. And of course, we had seen a kind of confrontation earlier 2 weeks ago in front of the parliament when the people dressed in yellow shirt, supposedly to be among members of loyalist groups, confronting and at times came into contact and were involved in some scuffles with the pro-democracy protesters. So that certainly is a scene that nobody wants to see repeated. And it was certainly commendable on the part of these protesters today to decide to move their protest venue to a different location. Otherwise, there would have been would have been a confrontation with the loyalist groups.
And if we all remember last week with the scuffle between the protesters, the anti-establishment protesters and the royalists, that was definitely a violent scene that was going on. And for this time round, the anti-government protesters decided to move to SCB so that they avoid confrontation with the royalists. And based on reports, apart from this rally site, the royalists are actually gathering at Lumpini Park.
And since the rally began about 2 hours ago, speakers after speakers have been talking about issues related to the royal assets, and some of them were quite direct in their attacks on what they see as the abuses of the royal assets.
And this is the live stream from the rally site. And as you can see, the protesters are still gathering in front of the head office. But so far, there are no scuffles or no tense situations.
No, the change of venue of the rallies came at last minute. It was a last minute change of mind. But if you look at the number of people who have turned up and who are also joining the protest, you have to admit that the response to every call for rallies like this has been quite successful, and have received certainly very good response from the people who believe in the same causes. So this is an area where the traffic is normally very, very bad at any hours, especially during rush hours. So you are certainly advised to avoid coming near this area.
And during peak times, this area is definitely a bad area for driving, especially like if you're going to work or you're going back home. Those peak hours, this is definitely one of the worst traffic areas in Bangkok.
And no doubt, all the offices in the building, and including the bank itself, are closed today until further notice.
And when the SCB head office announced the temporary closure for today, many of the employees actually had to rush back to their office to get their laptops and what they need to work from home today. And this is something completely unexpected for them because it was actually a very sudden notice.
Yeah. And of course, the three-finger salute has become a symbol of defiance adopted by the protesters and has been imprinted on souvenirs, T-shirts,
And so far, based on the recent updates, Penguin said that they will attempt to escalate the protests for 5 straight days, and they're not backing down for sure. And what you're seeing right here are the ducklings, which has been symbolic of the anti-establishment protests today and during the past week.
Yeah. So all of a sudden, these rubber ducks have become a symbol of the protesters.
And it has become a merch for for those who participated in the rally today.
Yeah.
So we're seeing a lot of rubber duck
Yeah.
merch right here, whether it's like keychains, mini dolls, as well as rubber ducks on their helmets as well. It definitely caught a lot of attention.
Yeah. No, the merchandising of these symbolic items, I think is very interesting. I mean, people have been so quick in adopting the business.
So it's more like the merchants took this opportunity to sell these rubber duck merchandise.
All right. We don't have any ideas what will happen next and what kind of messages will be set out by the protest leaders. But of course, I mean, criticizing the Crown Property Bureaus and how the royal assets are being handled will certainly be among the issues that will be raised by the protest leaders in their speeches. And of course, with the threat of using Article 112 hanging over their heads, I mean, the protest leaders will certainly understand the perils they are facing if they insist in going on and continuing with their criticism of the monarchy. In fact, the Article 112 has not been used for quite some time now. Prime Minister Prayut told the media that it was an instruction from His Majesty the King that this particular article not be used against for political reasons. And so we're talking, when we talk about the 12 protest leaders being charged with this offense, these are the first group of people to face charges under this particular article of the criminal code.
And as we previously reported, the 12 protest leaders are facing lese majesty charges, and some of them were also facing sedition charges as well. And based on the information from the Metropolitan Police Bureau, since July up until now, there have been up to 170 cases where police had to arrest or charge the protesters.
All right, so this is the latest from the area in front of the SCB headquarters on Ratchayotin Road. And as we have been saying this whole afternoon, the whole area has been blocked off to traffic, so don't go there.
Well, find alternate ways to get back home today and one thing that we will definitely expect, there will be a lot of bad traffic ahead during the peak hours when you get home today. So be sure to check the alternative routes and just be safe.
Yeah. So we come back when there's new development with the rally. So I'll see you again soon.